Welcome to What's Going On with Lady D today. I'm your host, Lady D. Join us every Thursday at 4 p.m. for another.
Well, okay, so what's going on today? I'm going to share the joke with you later on in the conversation. I am Lady D with What's Going On Today, and I have a wonderful guest here, no other than Mr. James Oliver, the tax pro who knows it all. And we're talking about right now how to save you money, how to save the economy money. He might be able to go into the president's office and teach them a thing or two. Hey, all right, welcome to the show, Mr. Oliver.
Well, thank you for having me again. It's always a pleasure being on the show with you.
Yes, it is. And I know you are going to give us the 411 on the biggest tax mistakes, the hidden deductions, and what's changing in 25.
Well, right now, in terms of what's changing in 25, that is really, unfortunately, really very much in the air. Our president has been going back and forth. He says that he initially wanted to change the tax structure to a 10% flat tax.
Yes.
And so the problem with that is that his colleagues who are making millions of dollars are not paying any taxes. So if I made $100 million and not paid any tax on it, and now I make it that same $100 million, I got to pay 10%. That's $10 million that I have to pay that I didn't have to pay before. So I am sure his colleagues who are in that particular quote unquote stratus are going to be pulling his coat and saying, you know, Don, that plan ain't really going to work. Not going to work for us.
Okay.
So that's one of the problems that he's trying to struggle with is that do I keep what I have? Do I change it to something totally different? And so right now we're kind of at a stalemate. Another, of course, problem is that with the number of people that are working for IRS has just dropped by 6,000 people.
Yeah.
And during the middle of tax season, he laid off 6,000 employees. And so as a commissioner, I would think that some of the employees are temporaries. And so I think you would lay off the ones that are temporaries first. But that could cause a little bit of a problem in terms of for tax season right now that since this is the height of the season for people getting their refunds back on a timely basis. And so that could cause a little bit of a problem in terms of the long term. So I just think people need to just be very, very careful about that in terms of, you know, if you're going to wait to file your taxes late, and that's a strategy some people do because one of the strategies that people, an old strategy was that for audits, IRS would say, we're going to audit 1,000 people who gives more than $10,000 in contributions. And so they have a kind of a ticker. And so when they get the first 10,000 people, then it stops.
Okay.
So if I wait past that time and I've given more than $10,000, the likelihood of me being audited is going to be very, very small.
Okay.
So you avoid the audit, but now you might also have a much longer waiting period because just as it happened in COVID, if you remember, people who mailed in tax returns during COVID time, they were backed up 6 to 9 months because they mailed it because people weren't coming to work.
Right.
And so the other problem is now our good president has said, I want these people to come back to work. And I personally talked to an IRS agent or an IRS representative who's been with the IRS for 14 years. And she said to me, James, the office that I used to work at is being occupied by somebody else. And there are several other people. They have no office to go to. So they're being ordered to go to a place they don't, and it can't be the same place. So now I got to make adjustments. And of course that takes time. I got to, figure out where we're going to put these people at. All that's going to be a problem.
Well, I would have thought that the employers, I know it was a cost saving for them to be able to have the people to work at home. But eventually, this was not going to last forever. So that should have been something that should have been planned out. Even if they go and rent a small area, a building,
Right.
just to bring the people back in, because that is on the employer. That's their responsibility
That's
to
correct.
provide a place for their people.
And maybe over time they had planned to do that, but this to say today, without any forewarning,
Yeah.
any pre-notions, and saying you need to do this now, it's a little bit abruptive, and so that's part of the problem. Is that he wants things done now, and there was no plans for that.
So now, speaking of now, what are some of the things that you would recommend that we do as taxpayers to be prepared for right now?
Well, some of the things that we still have available to us. For example, if you are a business person, the nice thing about being in business for yourself, there's deductions you can take that you just can't take ordinarily. For an example, if I wasn't in business for myself, there's no way I could travel around the country and write it off. Okay. However, as a business person, I can have several reasons that I can travel any place in the country and write it off for tax purposes. For an example, I can take a class, whether it be in Cleveland, Florida, California, and write the trip off.
Right.
Okay. I can go see people in my own business. Let's say, for an example, if I am doing, let's say, for an example, I'm doing podcasts, but I hear that there's a guy or a gal in California who does great podcasts. I can go there, interview that person, talk to that person, find out what they're doing that I'm not doing, and make that a business trip. Okay. Another thing I can do as a owner of a corporation, a corporation has, if you're an LLC and you're filing as a corporation, you have to have a board of directors meeting every year. Well, there's nothing in the tax law that says that your board of directors meeting has to be in the city that you live in. You can have that board of directors meeting any place in the world. You can have it not only in here, but if you want to go and say, okay, but as long as you conduct business like you're supposed to.
That's right.
Okay. In fact, even IRS has what's called a nationwide tax form, and they have their tax forms. Isn't it great that they have tax forms in Florida, California, all the places, Texas, all the nice places?
Yeah.
So they even do it themselves. So that's a deduction that you can take, that if you weren't in business for yourself, you cannot take it. So take advantage of that and travel. And say, in fact, why you still can, because we might not be able to travel.
Because what's here today may be gone tomorrow.
Right. Well, of course, our friendly guy says that he wants to make Canada part of the U.S. He wants to make Mexico part of the U.S. Now, whether that happens or not, I don't know. But like I said, so you may want to get those travels in while you can, while they're still what they are today.
But you're trying to put the wall up there. And
Who's going to put the wall up? Who are you going to hire?
is the Great Wall coming?
It probably eventually will. Is it coming right away? I don't see that coming.
Okay, because there's more important things that we need to get rid of.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So then in the meantime, how can I maximize my tax liabilities legally?
The other thing that we can do is using our cars. Now, there's two ways to write off a car. There's what's called the standard deduction, and it's called actual expenses. Now, if you take the standard deduction, last year in 2024, you can take 24. In 2024, you could take 67 cents a mile. For 2025, you can take 70 cents a mile. So every mile you travel for business, you can take 70 cents off on your car. Now, the other way as you can do it is you can do what's called actual expenses. So in other words, you can write off a portion of your insurance, a portion of your interest, a portion of your repairs, your tires. You just now have to figure out how much, if I drive my car 12,000 miles, 1,000 miles a year, 1,000 miles a month for $12,000 a year, how much of that 12,000 miles was for business? If it's 60%, 40%, whatever percentage it is, that's the percentage that you can write off your car on.
Okay.
And so those are nice little benefits, because once again, you can, and the IRS does not say you have to get a Kia or you can get a Lexus. You can go whatever you like. and make it a business car. So if you want that luxury car, if you like that Lexus, you like that Mercedes, and you
Yes.
want to drive it for business, go for it, because Uncle Sam's going to help you pay for it.
Now, what about the I don't want to call him the poor working man, but can he use his right, take advantage of this as well when he buy his vehicle, and he's using it going back and forth to work? No.
Unfortunately, under the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the employee really, if you lived in Cleveland and worked in Columbus, and you think, man, that's a lot of miles. You
Yes.
going back and forth to Columbus 100 miles a day. Is any of that deductible? No, none of it's deductible. That's why it's better to have one of the best tax deductions you can have these days is having your own business, because you can take expenses and deductions that you can't take on a personal basis. And so that's why I said, if commuting expenses has never been deductible, no matter if you're commuting 1 mile or 100 miles, that is not a deductible expense. Now, on the flip side, as a business owner, I can go wherever I go. If I'm doing it for business, let's say for an example, like me coming down here, this is a tax deduction for me. I can write this off, that I'm doing this for business.
Yes.
When I go to Sam's Club and buy paper, the mileage I go back and forth. If I pick up a tax return, if I go travel for, let's say for an example, for a class, any place in the country, if I decide not to take the planes, because I'm kind of worried about the planes, if I want to just travel in my car,
Right.
I can take my car and write the expenses for my car. I can write the expenses for the hotel. I can write the expenses for my food. If I flew there, I can write the expenses out for my Uber. So once again, the small business person has many, many more deductions available to him than a employee does. In fact, at this point, an employee really has zero deductions. Even people who are working at home. Now, you would think that Congress would have been sympathetic to the employers because of COVID during the time. Said, okay, since you're working at home, using your own computer, using their own home office, none of
Gas
that,
and air conditioning, all of that.
stuff, gasoline,
Utilities.
their phone, none of that is deductible. None of it.
Wow, well, you need to get on back into the office and go to work.
There you go. You need to go back to work. Exactly. But now, once again, as a independent contractor, as a small business person, I can write off my home. I can write off my computer. I can write off my desk. I can write off my chair. I can write off all the supplies I have doing business. And so those are the benefits that you have as a small business person that you do not have as an employee.
So a business owner, you hear this, so it's really good for you to be able to keep a hold of your receipts and what you spend.
Yes.
Keep a track of that because you're going to need it if you ever need to get audit. And I know a friend of mine years ago, she had this big old giant shoebox, but it was all her receipts. And she kept them for like years because they can come and go back. How far can they go back?
If generally speaking, 3 years, but if they suspect fraud, there's no limitation. If they feel that you're cheating, intentionally cheating the government, there's really no time limit as far as they can go back.
Okay.
So, but one of the things that, in terms of just keeping records, you may want to use apps. I happen personally to use an app that when I get a receipt, I use my phone and take a picture of that receipt, because sometimes receipts tend to fade. After a year, you try to look at them and see, well, I can't really see what this says because the ink has faded. By taking a picture, it does two things. The app, now you have a picture that's going to be preserved, and also the app adds the receipts up. So for all my gasoline, all I have to do is look at my app and say, what's the total? Bam. Or my supplies, it's right there.
Now the apps, how secure are those?
As secure as any other app on your phone. So, but the other thing is this: is that how many people are really going to be trying to get at your expenses?
Okay, all right. I mean,
right.
So much is going on. I'm
Right.
just because people always say use the app. I'm not a techie person. I don't know about it. But the other things that you can also coordinate your app. Let's say if you use a software, like QuickBooks or Quickens, and so you can have that app and your QuickBooks software at home to coordinate between the two, and so now you have the app with QuickBooks, and you have all your stuff. Awesome. So now tell me this here. So how do a business owner handle their payroll, taxes, and independent contractors?
I would probably say the best way is to probably hire a payroll service that does that, and that way you don't get yourself in trouble.
Okay.
You know, the payroll service, that's all they do. They know how to do the 940s, the 941s. They send it in. You can take care of that. Here's another thing that people don't realize. I'm glad you mentioned that, because even if, let's say, for an example, you kind of slow down the business and stop having employees, now you're just working for yourself.
Right.
If you have started that payroll service, then you still have to file payroll even though it's 0 employees until you actually close the business. IRS is looking for that. The same thing with sales tax. People have a tendency they want to be a vendor and they don't want to pay the sales tax because they're going to buy it wholesale and sell it retail. And if I get my vendor's license today, but I don't get business, actually my business 2 years from now, the state of Ohio is going to, they don't know that you're not in business.
Right.
So they will send you a letter and say, hey, Mr. Vendor, you got your sales tax license a couple years ago. You haven't sent any reports. And so based on your company and what other people do in this industry, we assume that you probably have $1,000, $2,000 in sales tax. So just write us a check for that $2,000, even though you haven't been open. So now you got to, write a letter, tell them you haven't been open, send in the reports, potentially maybe could get some penalties for not doing that. So you have to be aware when you have these things that you don't want to, say if you're not in business, then if you plan to get out of business, then close the business down. Because these forms that you have to file, they're still looking for them, even though you may just say 0 returns until you actually officially close the business. So now I had a situation where I had a client, had a partnership. They said, James, we are done with this partnership. We don't want to do it anymore. We want to close the business. So he said, can you help us? So we did the dissolution. We did all the things. Now, can you imagine, not even 6 months later, get a phone call. James, we rethought about this. We want to start that partnership up again. Do you think we can go back to the state and just, so when I reviewed it for the state, it said, and I showed him, it said, dead. I said, no, you got to start all over again. So you may want to think about if you close, but if you close too early, you got to start again. So we have to start all over again, that whole business. But the flip side is that you don't want to keep something open if you really, really know that you're going to be closed,
right,
because of the fact that different agencies will be looking for certain things. Even though you haven't done anything, they still want to know that you haven't done anything.
And you're going to be charged penalties.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and
Right.
they add up.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So are there any upcoming tax laws, changes that could impact one's business?
Well, some of the things that just the changes automatically. For an example, you can still, as a small business person, hire your children. Children under 18, you can hire them
Today?
You
For
can
right now.
For right now,
That's
yeah.
not. That's
Right. Okay. And
not changing tomorrow.
That's not changing tomorrow. No.
Okay.
And so you can hire them. You can pay them up to $15,000. And instead of paying them or giving them an allowance, which is not tax deductible, have them legitimately work in your office. Whether it be answering phone calls, cleaning up the office, making phone calls, doing paperwork. You want to document that. Mm-hmm. But the point is that now you can pay them right off on their taxes, and because it's less than $15,000, last year was $14,600, they don't pay any taxes for them. It's tax free, and there's several different strategies you can use with that. Now the money that they use that you've paid them, you can do several things with it. You can open up a Roth IRA, where they can put money away for their future or put money away for school. And so now you have a way, actually kind of a backdoor way to pay for things.
That's very smart.
Mm-hmm.
Very smart. So I would really highly suggest my listeners, you're getting all of this wonderful information. You really need to be giving this tax pro here, who also has a book. Tell us about your book, James.
The book has to do with, the name of the book is A Dozen Mistakes That Business Owners Fail to Make, and it costs them thousands. And what the book basically talks about is things that owners don't do. For an example, one of the strategies is to hire your kids. Why are these owners who have teenagers that they can legitimately hire in the office and paying them an allowance for their clothes and whatnot, where they can hire these rascals, put them to work, give them some responsibility, because at some point they got to learn how to work anyway.
Right.
While you're hiring your own business, and they can take that money that they use and buy their own clothes, buy their own toys, buy their own bikes, whatever they want to buy, and then you can write it off legitimately. So those are things that, once again, if you are aware of, or another thing is the entity. For an example, if you're making, let's say, over $100,000, you may not want to be a sole proprietor. You may want to change that entity, what's called an S corp.
Okay.
S corp can save you thousands of dollars in Social Security. As a self-employed person, you have to pay your own Social Security. Remember, as an employee, your employer pays half and you pay half. But
Okay.
when you're self-employed, you pay the full 15.3. Okay, by having a S corp, you can cut that amount in half, literally, and just pay yourself a dividend and reap the benefits of saving Social Security. Thousands of dollars you can save every year by just changing the entity, depending on what you make. So that's another benefit. Another thing that you can do, let's say if you and I were married and in business, and I could hire you as my wife.
Well,
I-
I've been your wife in
Oh.
several events.
yes. And so,
I ain't getting no tax deduction though.
so I can hire you and give you fringe benefits, health fringe benefits. And so I say I can pay you and do a health plan for you, and that plan can obviously be for a family plan, which now would include me and the kids, and I can write it off on my taxes.
Oh.
So that's a kind of a nice way to, of course, if you're not married, there's another way of doing it. You can do it through a corporation, so there's different ways to structure some health plans for yourself if you're self-employed.
Let me ask you, what about the foster children? What kind of benefits or write-offs, or how does it,
Well, believe it or not,
That
if you
work.
don't have a business, if you have less than 5 foster kids, the money that you receive for the foster care is
Yes.
tax-free.
Okay.
So you don't, now, once again, if you have more than 6, then the government says, you got a little bit of a business here, so now you have to claim the money. But if you keep it
Okay.
under the threshold, then the money that you receive for them is basically tax-free.
Okay.
So, and I think they age out at 18. So from 1 to 18, the money that you receive is basically tax-free.
Okay, so does that have anything to do with the child tax credit?
Oh, but you can still have all the benefits in terms of having, whether they're foster or your actual own
Your own.
birth. Yes, you still have the tax deduction, tax credit. If you put that foster child to work to pay him or pay her,
Right.
and you can write that off. So
Okay.
you have all the benefits of that. So that doesn't change, whether it be foster or your own child, whether you, let's say, foster or even someone you're not. So there is something called an adoption credit that we don't talk about very much.
Okay.
But it is, let's say, for an example, if you just have you go to Ghana on your business trip because you were, doing some business travel,
Right.
and you met a child that you said that you want to adopt as your own. The government will reimburse you over $15,000 to go through the process of adopting that child. And so it's a very, very nice credit. It's not talked about a lot.
Okay.
But all the expenses, from the travel, the paperwork, they will reimburse you up to $15,000, and that's $15,000 credit.
Oh, that's good, because you got to kick all that money up front.
Oh yes,
And
yes,
that could be very expensive.
right,
Right.
So there is a benefit for that if you decide to, if you want to do that.
So, what is the deadline this year for getting your taxes in without penalty?
Okay, so there's actually 3 dates that you should really keep in mind.
Okay.
The first date is coming up in March 15th. And so most people are not aware of what's March 15th. March 15th is the deadline. If you have an S corporation or a partnership, the deadline for those entities is March 15th. Okay, and then of course everyone is familiar with April 15th. If you have a regular C corporation or your personal taxes, they're due April 15th. And then there's one more, May 15th. May 15th is for our nonprofits, for 990s. If you have a nonprofit entity and you obviously are filing tax returns, then the deadline is May 15th. And of each one of those, if you're not ready by those times, you can get a 6-month extension for those things.
I was going to ask, are they still allowing us to have the
Oh,
extensions?
yes. In fact, to me, I don't know. I just think that businesses, and now why IRS decided to have these businesses due date March 15th, when I'd probably say 90% of those organizations file extensions because they're just not ready.
Right. Right.
So, but yeah, you do have that up to that time. If you're not ready, just file an extension. You get another 6 months. So that then carries it over to from March 15th to September 15th, from April 15th to October 15th, and then from May to November 15th. If you file those extensions.
Well, that is wonderful information. Would you let our listeners know how they can reach you? Because I know you're booked and you're busy, but you can always take on more.
Thank you. Well, the name of the company is called JC and Associates Tax and Financial, and my phone number is 216-491-9350, and you can hit my website, which is www.cleveland-accounting.com.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I hope you really enjoyed and got you some great information. Hopefully we'll be able to bring him back next month, but there's going to be a time span. Things are going to get really busy. So if I was you, I would go ahead and take advantage of file your taxes today.
Yes, right. The thing is, with knowing those employees, it might be, it's better now than wait for 6 months if that happens. So only time will tell as to how long it's going to take that situation to fall out to the public.
And now that's what's going on. Thanks for watching. Join us every Thursday, and you too can be a guest straight from KAZ Radio Podcast Studio.